I don't want to stop the flow. Anybody else have anything you want to share?
But it's like there's, God becoming man to understand man more.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, he already knows what man is, he created man. But to really understand what we suffer through, what we struggle with, our lives are like, and ultimately experience the one thing that touches all humans, death. To experience death. God doesn't have to die, but he willingly chooses to die. Sort of to come to an ultimate place to understand this is what my creation deals with, And that's like something that, like so many people have said, God could have ordered the salvation or the redemption or reconciliation in any way, really. If you believe God is God, but he chose that particular way because if you really want to know what someone's going through, you go through it with them. And that's what he does. He goes through suffering and the effects of sin, which is death. And out of that comes life,
Yeah.
So out of this horrible, we look at it like you said, I've watched, what is it, the Mel Gibson movie? And some of it's hard to watch. I'm truly interested in learning and things like that. It's hard to watch the imagery, but you think about it, why it's being done. It's not. I think when we get over that thing of like, well, he had to pay for something. He's not. I think he's trying to enter into that relationship with us to understand what it feels like to be abandoned, what it feels like to be hurt, what it feels like to be disappointed, and then ultimately what it feels like to die, which is the ultimate thing. That his creation has to face. So that's how I used to look at it like that too. I was like, oh, this is terrible. Why did that have to happen? But now I understand it more as like he was trying to get to know us better through that.
Right. And I had said in the very first week when we started like the Cross series that I wasn't interested in getting into a bunch of doctrines, quite frankly. Nothing against doctrines, it just wasn't my interest. You can go read a book and read about the atonement. You can go through all, and that's great. But I think the cross speaks a lot more than developing good doctrine, like we're sharing in this room. And is kind of what you're saying now is that we do not in any way diminish the atonement and the price that sin demanded, not the Father, sin demanded. And we get all that. We get the doctrine part of it. But after, reciting statements of faith, what do we have left now? Do we have peace? Do we have a rest? Do we have joy? Do we have a truth resonating in us that can be shared with others who are without hope and say, but there is hope. I can show you a picture of a guy on a cross on Friday and can show you a picture of him on Monday. It's kind of, we have something. We really, really have something way beyond doctrine. We can swear anybody in it, on doctrine. I believe you can do that if you want. But all of us have realized, whether it's in suffering, whatever it might be, our doctrine isn't what gets us through. It's the presence of God and the power of his word in us that goes beyond our understanding. I'm left with this thing about the cross that it's beyond understanding. It's way, way, way. And we've got what we've got, and that's really good because that's what we need. That's what Jesus left us, is what we need. To really get it, we ain't got it. We got some bits, but we ain't got it. And it's okay. So that's all right. But you've got enough for this life you've got on earth to put one foot in front of the other, make a difference in somebody else's life, have a peace and a rest about who you are as well as who I am. And that all seems to point to the cross. Seems to. Anybody else have things? I had written down one final thought, but it was only that if I want to share it and feel like it's necessary or not, otherwise it doesn't matter.
Something.
Yeah.
You think about Genesis, back in chapter 3, when Adam and Eve sinned. And the Lord said, the serpent, you're going to bruise his heel. The seed of the woman, you're going to bruise the seed of the woman's heel. but he's going to crush your head. Then all through Scripture, you're seeing different manifestations of the idea of sacrifice, of a lamb being sacrificed for sin. Isaiah 53 talks about how Jesus was going to be marred and, crucified. I mean, Psalm 22 talks about his crucifixion. You see all this thing.
Yeah.
So it's right out there. It's right out there in the open. And Satan was a party, and he understands and can read Scripture, and he knows Scripture. And yet, it seems very interesting to me that God used Satan to accomplish the task that he had by entering Judas to betray Jesus, and Jesus crucified on the cross. Looks like total weakness, looks like defeat, and he rises from the dead, and he makes a show of them openly, triumphing in it, blotting out the handwriting that was against us. How awesome is this?
Yeah.
And the plan was from the beginning. As soon as man sinned, God already had redemption in mind. It's just so, it's so incredible. It's so incredible. And
Before the foundation
no
of the world.
surprise, huh?
Before the foundation, the Lamb was slain before the foundation.
Before the foundation of the world. It's just
Got this one covered.
so awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not very good about doctrine and knowing all of that stuff.
But you look good, sweetie.
But I'm just so thankful for just that he did that, that he died so that we could live, that we could be whole, that we could be at peace, that we could be happy, that we're going to end up with him forever. And I'm just so thankful for your teachings. You've put an emphasis that's very different from all that I've been taught over the last 40 years or so. You just pointed us in just a completely different direction, of his love. And I am so grateful for that. It's just made me love him more, just so much more, and just recognizing how much he loves me. I'm just really thankful that God brought us here to be able to sit under this kind of teaching for the last few years, to just open things up even more, how great his love is for us. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Lord. I'm just finishing a book that somebody had given to me, so I read it. And I don't mean to sound rude or anything, but it kind of comes in from a whole different way than where I'm at and what I really believe is the life message, of the Bible. And the whole book has to do with the prodigal, which makes it even more interesting to me. That there are all these demands in this book that I'm reading. There are all these demands placed upon us as a representation of the prodigal. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, all this kind of stuff. And it fascinates me because, like we said last week, the prodigal, what does he actually do to make up for all that he's done?
Just shows up.
Goes back home, walks home. I mean, Dad's not even interested in the confession. He's reciting his confession over and over again, and he doesn't tell his son to shut up. He just wraps his arms around him, kisses him, tells everybody else we're going to have the whole thing. And somehow we've walked away with a message that is just not consistent. And I'm reading. I'll finish the book because I should. I'll finish it. But I've been very disappointed because at the heart of the book really is not the son, it's the father. And the father's heart of total acceptance. And that this kid, like all of us in here, did nothing but prepare a worthless confession. He only had one thing going for him, was a hope that stems from faith, that when he got there, Dad would receive him back. But he still didn't know the Father to the extent that he realized, I don't even have to do any of that. All I have to do is show up. Who just said that? All I have to do is show up. And Dad's just waiting for me. It's really, so it's really what you're saying about, I don't think that there's necessarily anything new in the realm of the last 2,000 years of what men and women of God have appreciated and heard from God in prayer and everything else. I don't think there's anything really new, happening, but just the desire, all the people that are here, yourself included, to know God, to know Him more, to know His Word more, to sense Him in such a way. And His Spirit of grace and truth, He's going to reveal stuff to us because we want Him to. We don't want to just keep regurgitating a doctrine over and over again. We would rather be eating a kind of a fresh bread, that is nourishing, it smells good, tastes good.
Tasty.
It's tasty, Ooh, I like that. Put a little sauce on it, make some pizza, I guess I'll go ahead, I'll share this thought that I brought in, something that I didn't, talk about before, and something actually you all have been saying in different ways. It's interesting. It doesn't mean you can't interrupt me and throw in something else. If something strikes you, go for it. David, you can see he's turning the camera and trying to catch the different things that people are saying, and that's fine. Something that we haven't talked about at all, there's a lot that we haven't talked about with the cross, but something that we haven't talked about, how they put the sign on the cross, over, Pilate had that sign made, that they nailed to the cross over Jesus' head. And all four Gospels concur that there was a sign. When you read the four Gospels, it's worded a little differently, but it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We'll leave that for other people, other places. The point is that there was a sign on the cross that revealed him as King of the Jews. And you can read about that. It was in 3 different languages, and I don't know how much you've read about, or I don't know, I never saw the Passion of the Christ, so I don't know if they showed him wearing it around his neck, the sign, when he was carrying the cross.
To the cross or
Right.
something after he died.
Okay, so it was traditional, somebody who was crucified in that fashion. Not always, but usually that sign actually was a sign that revealed what their crime was. So if they were a thief, they would wear that sign around their neck as they were dragging the cross to be crucified. This guy's a thief. He's a murderer. He's whatever he is. They would wear the sign. So, because it showed their offense. And it really kind of makes, your brain do a flip. What was his offense? King of the Jews. There was no other offense. Because there wasn't an offense. King of the Jews.
Hence the crown of thorns.
And the crown of thorns, yep, exactly, and the purple robe, the whole thing, a demonstrative kind of mockery of his kingship, if you would. But even still, looking at it in terms of King of the Jews, King of Rome, King of what, it's so much lower. I mean, an earthly king, who needs him, to be honest with you. But that's what he's wearing. They nail that to the tree, and it's in John's Gospel, John 19:19. What John records, and remember, he's the 4th Gospel. What John records, I lean a little bit more in the direction of, but it doesn't matter. What John records is that the sign said Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And he's the only one that phrases it that way. In Matthew, Mark, Luke, you can read King of the Jews, here is the King of the Jews, whatever. John records Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Let's just read a couple of scriptures. This is what it says, King of the Jews. Somebody want to read John 19, just verse 21.
Therefore the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews." But he said, "I am the King of the Jews."
Don't write that he's the king of the Jews, but write that he said he's king of the Jews. Anyone ever remember Jesus ever saying he was king of the Jews? He never did.
The people called him that.
He never did. He never called himself a king. So here they're still, even at the crusade, they're saying, don't write that. Write that he said it. And Pilate says, what I wrote. And if you're smart, you go home and, have your Passover and get on with life. He's not very happy at that point. The point is this, when you read his trial before, which we're not going to do, before Pilate, he talks about his kingdom. But he never calls himself a king. In fact, when Pilate finally arrives at the conclusion, so you are a king, what does Jesus say? That's what you say. Jesus is not denying that he's a king, but he's saying to humanity, your style, the way you see me, what you want me to be, is a king. You say that I'm a king. I'll wear that. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't a king, right? I'm just saying from Jesus being called a king, never says it. In fact, at one point in John 6, when he perceives that the people are going to want to take him away and make him a king, he goes off